Finding Strength podcast is sponsored by Avantacool.
Avantacool.
Yeah, cold plunges. Who's surprised? We got a cold plunge sponsor. Yeah. I met Jeff Rempfer at a first responder conference not too long ago. He and his brother Dave are the owners, and Jeff's a first responder guy. They are killing it. They're this amazing cold plunges. We just got one put in at our house. How do you like it?
I love it, actually. I mean, it's
Game changer, huh?
It is a game changer, especially from coming from a horse trough?
Horse trough.
That's what we've been using.
It worked.
Hey, it did. It worked. It was great. I love it.
But it doesn't have a UV filter, freaking regular filter. This thing has a hot tub filter.
Yeah, it goes hot and cold. It's amazing.
It goes to 104 degrees and then all the way down to
45 degrees.
30s. Into the high 30s is what they'll do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy good stuff. We love it.
You don't need to go that low to get the benefits.
Yeah, low 40s is actually really what you need.
That's my favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah. 45 degrees, 3 minutes, and then get me out.
And then get you out. Yeah, we love it. But the main things that our sponsor wants us to highlight is that it's got an all aluminum frame. It's light, easy to move around. We put it up on our deck. You're able to get it up the stairs and stuff like that.
Installing it was the easiest thing. That was the easiest part, was installing it. I was surprised. We took it up a flight of stairs onto our deck, and it was not that hard.
Yeah.
I was surprised how light it was.
Right.
And then even filling it up. How was that for you?
Super easy.
Yeah.
Really easy to use. I absolutely love this thing. It's got this huge pump in it. So it gets cold really quick and it can heat up really quick as well. And the best part, most hot tubs use like a 220 cables. You have to direct line in.
Oh, yeah.
This thing uses 110. You just plug it into your regular friggin' outlet and you're ready to go. Another amazing benefit. If you use the code STRENGTH24, you will get 25% off.
25% off. That's amazing.
Amazing. They're hooking us up. They really love the cause. We love them. We couldn't be more grateful to these guys for sponsoring the show. So if you need a cold plunge, Avantacool. That is AVANTIKUL.com.
Avantacool. Welcome back to the Finding Strength podcast.
We're here again.
Back again. Isn't that like an Eminem song or something?
Guess who's back? Back again. Finding strength. Tell a friend.
Hey, tell a friend.
I know rap music too, not just freaking
not just rock
and roll.
But on this episode, we're going to talk to you guys today about depression. Just because, it's I feel like it's the season of depression. We're in February. January is really hard to kind of get through. But then we get to February, we're like, oh, we're almost there. But we're not. It's like we're at the top of the hill and now we have to come back down. And I feel like, seasonal depression is a thing. And I experience it. Do you experience it?
Seasonal depression?
Yeah. What do you think? I don't think you've experienced depression for a while.
Have I been depressed before? Definitely.
Yes, you have.
Yes, but I think this actually brings up a really important first topic, which is really what is depression? Because one of the things that happens now, maybe you've heard this before, is there's these this colloquial saying oh, I'm so depressed.
Yeah.
And especially if you got teenagers, man, they're all depressed.
It's cool to be depressed right now.
A little bit. Which is, we could get into that if we want to. We can go wherever we want with this thing. But the reality is there's an actual clinical definition for major depressive disorder.
Yeah.
Which differentiates from a depressed mood, which also differentiates from seasonal affective disorder, which is seasonal, which also differentiates from grief.
Well, and just being sad, right?
Well, and being sad is adaptive.
There's a difference between depression and being sad.
You have to be sad.
Yeah.
The nature of life is that it's going to be uncomfortable and painful. And there's going to be moments throughout your life where you're freaking sad. But depression is another level of that.
Yeah.
And it's persistent. So what I did, friends, is I brought the book. And if you're on YouTube, you can see the manual here. This is the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. It's even hard to say the stupid
It really
title
is.
of this dumb book.
5th edition too.
Whew, and they're coming out with a new one. Don't worry. This is already going to be outdated soon.
Oh my
But look at the size of this
gosh.
book. So this is what I use when I'm doing diagnosing for people. And you go through here and there's diagnostic criteria for everything. And in order to be diagnosed with a specific disorder, right, you have to meet certain criteria. So here, page 160 of the DSM-5 is the criteria for major depressive disorder, right? So what's interesting here is that there's a couple of caveats as well, but really there's the diagnostic criteria, 5 or more of the following symptoms present during the same 2-week period and represent a change from previous functioning. That's key. So 2 weeks, change from previous functioning. At least one of the symptoms is depressed mood or loss of interest or pleasure. So we learned 2 things. There's 2 parts to it. Depressed mood, which is the down mood, right? That's sad.
No motivation.
No motivation. Or this other thing called anhedonia.
I can't say that word. Anhedonia.
You said it perfectly. This is this loss of interest or pleasure, right? Which is very common when it comes to depression. Also elements of post-traumatic stress disorder and other stuff. But mood disorders in general have certain categories. But for major depressive disorder, 5 or more of the following symptoms. So depressed mood, most of the day, nearly all of the day, that's 1. Marked or diminished interest or pleasure in all or most activities, that's 2. Significant weight loss, that's 3. Insomnia or hypersomnia, so can't sleep or sleep too much. Psychomotor agitation or retardation nearly every day, observable by others, but not merely subjective feelings of restlessness or being slowed down. So that's a change in energy levels. Thanks for the fancy words there, you smart people. Fatigue or loss of energy every single day. That's a big one there. And psychomotor agitation can also be like tremors and things like that can also be a part of that. Feelings of worthlessness or excessive or inappropriate guilt, diminished ability to think or concentrate, or indecisiveness. You don't struggle with that, do you?
Indecisiveness. Damn it. That's on there?
We got to have 5. That's only 1, sweetie.
Okay.
That's
I only have 1. I'm good.
That's right. And recurrent thoughts of death, not just a fear of dying, recurrent suicidal ideation without a specific plan or suicide attempt or specific plan for committing suicide. If there is a plan or there is suicidal ideation, that might border on a different mood disorder. So those are the 9 criteria. You need 5 for 2 weeks or more, and there needs to be a shift in functioning. So we don't need to get too much into the weeds on like the actual diagnostic criteria. But what you have to understand is when you're coming out and you're going, I'm depressed, well, you better have 5 of those symptoms.
Yeah.
But if you're feeling sad or down, or if you have 2 or 3 of those symptoms, that doesn't mean you have major depressive disorder. That means that maybe your body is adapting to the world around you because of its circumstances.
Yeah.
And depending on your circumstances, the mood that you're experiencing may or may not be helpful. And this is the thing that's hard for people to understand is like a sad or down mood can be helpful.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a weird concept.
Yeah.
But when I say to myself, or when I tell myself, or my brain tells me, or people around me, or society, or the culture I grow up in, or the narratives that I've been, told by my parents or whatever, tell me that if you're sad, or show that you're sad, or if you have any signs of feeling bad at all about yourself, that means you're depressed and you hate that. What that resistance to those natural, normal feelings is going to do is going to make those symptoms worse. And what it usually leads to, behaviorally, is a bunch of avoidance. And I now try to stop feeling those feelings, and I try to find things that numb me out, disconnect me, dissociate me from those feelings. When in reality, this is Mother Nature's adaptive process of cluing us into the way that my life is.
Yeah.
It's trying to wake me up to the reality of my situation so that I change something.
Yeah.
But if I'm numbing those feelings all the time, there's no motivation to change.
Yeah. Well, and you can't have that feeling of oh, I need to change. Because you're not
Right.
thinking that way. My favorite thing that Jim Carrey, how he explained depression was he said, depression is your body telling you, I don't want to play this character anymore.
Yeah. He actually, can I
Yeah.
direct quote him?
Yeah.
Brace yourself, profanity ahead.
Oh, yeah. He does.
He says, depression is your body saying, fuck you. I don't want to play this role anymore.
Yeah.
Really?
Which I love.
Oh, yeah.
Because it like nobody wants to stay in a depression state. Like it's not fun. And so the way that he explained that just made me realize like, yeah, like it's trying to wake you up and be like, hey, let's change something here. Like obviously what we're doing is not working.
Right.
And I don't feel good about myself. And we get in this state, like you said, where we don't motivate ourselves anymore. And is it kind of like we get comfortable with that state, and so we want to stay within that comfort because we know what's to be expected?
That's a big part of it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the brain is obsessed with repetitive, predictable cycles and patterns. So if I get in a cyclical pattern of feeling down or depressed, my brain, because of its adaptive, incredibly powerful, survivalistic tendencies, is going to kind of shift my thinking without me giving it permission to saying, well, this is just who you are now. So you're a depressed person. And then the symptoms are going to become more and more and more pronounced over time because that's just who you are. So this becomes a major part of the depressive kind of treatment model. Like when you start looking at people who are depressed and who are struggling with mood disorders or whatever, is you begin to look at cognition, thinking. How do I see myself in relation to me, in relation to the past, to the future? How do I see myself in relation to other people? How do I see myself in relation to the world? And if I see myself as not good enough or too sad or, broken, that is going to bleed out into my worldview. That is going to bleed out into my relationships. And I'm going to be subconsciously, my brain is going to be looking for evidence to support that story.
Yeah.
That confirmation
Stupid
bias thing.
brain. Dang
Yeah. And this is the mental models of the world kind of concept, right? And that is why there's so many cool, new, exciting treatments for depression and really for, mood stuff, because anxiety would fall in this too. Like there's a lot of different mood disorders: bipolar, generalized anxiety disorder, major depressive disorder. You have other mood disorders, anhedonia. You have alexithymia. You have, mood dysphoria. There's so many different things, right?
Yeah.
And they all kind of fall in this same neuro pathway track. And if you can kind of figure out how this mood thing works in general for people, in humans in general, you can kind of hack your own mood issues, your own mood stuff, and in doing so, make your life better along the way.
Well, knowledge is key, right? Like if you have the knowledge and the understanding of how your brain is functioning through depression, then of course you can hack into that. So can you explain to us like how that works in the brain?
Yeah. So there's two, really three kind of like major chemicals in the brain that are involved in mood disorders. You've heard a lot about dopamine, right? You've heard a lot about serotonin. And then there's another one called norepinephrine or noradrenaline that's kind of a big part of it too. And I'm going to add in a fourth, because there really is a fourth, which is cortisol, which we've talked a lot about on this podcast, because all four of those chemicals are a big part of the depressive mood thing. So I also want to be really careful here, and I want to make sure we put in a disclaimer. Like if you are struggling with depression and you feel like you have some mood stuff, go talk to somebody. Yeah. I mean, that's what we do.
Yeah.
There's a lot of help out there. There's a lot of very effective treatments, from medication to behavioral to talk therapy to social intervention. There's a lot of things you can do out there to really help your mood. And hopefully this podcast can help people kind of one, understand what depression is, but two, also kind of find some tools to be able to deal with that depressive mood thing that shows up from time to time in our lives and not get stuck in a depressive cycle that lasts a really long time, which is a big problem.
Which happens, yeah.
Yeah.
And don't shame yourself. Like, give yourself some grace. Like, this is life. We experience this stuff, you know, like, and depression is part of life and a part of this experience. And so just kind of give yourself some grace and reach out to someone that you know, your healthcare provider or therapist that you know. Yeah.
So maybe we should start with what is depression? How do those four chemicals work?
Yeah.
We'll kind of juxtapose that with some of the treatments that are available. So the most common treatment for depression right now is going to be, what do you think?
For treatment?
Yeah.
Oh,
medication.
Take a pill.
Medication.
Here, take this pill.
So according to Doc Amen, who, if you know who that is, he's a great follow on Instagram and all this stuff, the Amen Institutes. He's a great guy. Brain science, super genius. He reported last year that there were 337 million prescriptions for antidepressants written in 2022.
That is crazy.
And if you know how many people there are in the United States, there's like 350-ish million. That's a lot of prescription medications.
Well, and one of the facts here is major depression impacts 5% of the population. 5%. That's kind of a
but
big
we're all
number.
on antidepressants. What's going on here?
Yeah.
So again, don't change your medication regimen. Don't do anything. We're not here to recommend what you should do with your medications. That's between you and your doctor. But we are here to inform you that these medications are being prescribed a lot.
Yeah.
And another very interesting fact is about a third of people who take these medications are what's called treatment resistant, and it doesn't help them.
What do you mean by treatment resistant?
So the treatment would be medication.
Oh, okay.
And so they are resistant to that treatment.
Okay.
Resistant. And certain populations are considered treatment resistant to specifically these types of antidepressant medications, the most popular being selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, which is like a Prozac or a Zoloft. Those are going to be your big ones that kind of most people are going to be taking. And so there's certain populations that are very treatment resistant. For example, if you have like really, really gnarly complex post-traumatic stress disorder, that's going to be kind of a treatment resistant population in general. First responders, who I work a lot with, not all of them are treatment resistant, but a large majority of them that I have found, and I've seen some research on this too, little treatment resistant. According to Body Keeps the Score, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, in his book, he talks about the military population being quite treatment resistant to Prozac when it first came out, and still that way today. So there's just certain mood issue stuff, especially when it comes to traumatization, that these SSRIs are not necessarily helping a ton with. But conversely, some people experience complete eradication of symptoms when they take this medication. Anecdotal experience. I have yet to see that in my practice.
Okay.
And it might be the people that I'm working with. It could be a bunch. I have not seen a complete eradication of symptoms. That is what a lot of the research says, though.
Yeah.
In my experience, and from what I've read as well, it's a reduction in symptoms that's significant, meaning that it's measurable. However, it is kind of like ancillary or an assistant to other behavioral interventions that seem to be as or more effective.
Yeah.
Right? So medications can be a wonderful helpmeet to treating your depression, but as a standalone intervention, in my experience, I have not seen SSRIs specifically or MAOIs or even SNRIs be a sufficient kind of like intervention to treat the entire gamut of depressive symptoms.
Well, it's kind of like you can go into like, you have a cut on your arm and you're bleeding and you need to go get stitches and you go see a doctor for that to sew it up, clean it out effectively and stuff like that. Can it kind of be the same thing when you're taking this pill and it's just kind of just doing the surface part of it? Like it's just cleaning it up a little bit, but it's not sewing up the stitch, the big, huge cut that you have and stuff like that.
That's a really good analogy.
There's a reason why, you have depression, correct? Is
Yeah.
there a reason why, or is this something that you can be born with genetically?
So genetically, yes. Genetics are a big part of mood disorders.
Okay.
Right? I believe we have some statistics in there about the genetic predisposition for mood disorders. I believe I saw in there it's 40 to 70%. Is that correct? Maybe fact check that.
Let me fact check you, because I can't remember where it was at.
And I don't know what that means.
No.
The 40 to 70% of people with mood disorders mean they it's like hereditary. I could tell you right now. I can look on my. I
was gonna say this one, something else.
I'll tell you right now. Fourth largest cause of disability. That's an interesting one too.
That is very interesting.
Yeah.
20% of people with depression have low thyroid function.
Yeah, there's a lot of.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Anyways, we'll fact check that. Don't quote us
yeah.
on that one. But I do know for a fact that it is quite generational and hereditary. And when it comes right down to it, the big thing that's happening with depression is it is, yes, a chemical imbalance, but that is not the primary issue.
Mm-hmm.
There's other stuff besides just chemistry that are going to be involved, but chemistry can be a really great kind of entry level way to understand it, going back to those four
dopamine,
four chemicals, which were, do you remember what they are? Pop quiz. Dopamine.
Yep.
Serotonin. Norepinephrine.
Yeah.
And cortisol. So pick one, and we'll start with each one and kind of say the elements of depression that these four chemicals affect.
I mean, let's just start with dopamine. I feel like that's the main factor, right?
Is dopamine. Yeah.
Because I think of dopamine, like I feel like I recently learned this. When I think of dopamine, I think of like the happy chemical and like, oh, I'm happy. But I've learned Huberman calls it the motivator.
Yep, motivator.
Chemical.
Mm-hmm.
Like it motivates you to do things.
Yes.
And not just necessarily the feeling of happiness.
Correct. It's the seeking chemical.
Yeah.
Yes, the seeking chemical. And so basically dopamine is designed to get your body to seek stuff more.
Yeah.
To do it again and again and again.
Because it drops that dopamine, right? And that feels good.
You get kind of like a hit.
Yeah.
Like, I want that again.
But he also explained that there's a pain side to it. It's like a pleasure pain.
Yeah. So the neural pathway associated with dopaminergic action, right, is both pleasure and pain on the same pathway.
Okay.
So they are, in fact, directly related pleasure and pain, almost like a seesaw.
Yeah, that's how he explained it. It's like a seesaw. Yeah. Okay.
Right? So when pleasure is high, pain is low. When pain is high, pleasure is low. That's typically how it seems to work chemically in the brain. However, you can hack this system and you can begin to train your brain to believing and understanding that not all pain is the same, and pain can be temporary, and pain can also be beneficial, and pain can be harmful.
Mm-hmm.
And pain can be a kind of a signal to what is about to come. And just on the other side of feeling pain might be joy and pleasure.
I was going to say, is there healthy pain?
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, on this podcast, we talk a ton about grief.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Extremely painful.
Yeah.
In fact,
but very good to.
And you're chemically imbalanced, so to speak. But really, is it an imbalance? Or is that Mother Nature's way of helping you connect to the experience of life through the chemical experience, the feeling experience of being alive? So you're going to have cortisol dysregulation, serotonin dysregulation. You're going to have depleted dopamine levels when you're grieving because that's the nature of it. But that doesn't mean that there's something wrong. And this is where we get into why the DSM thing gets kind of wacko. And you start to like look around, you go like, well, we're constantly diagnosing these things as disorders, but if they're truly adaptive, where does disorder begin and healthy functioning end?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the debate. And that's what's really hard for people, you know, in the treatment world, trying to figure out like what is that even like? Where does it?
Where does it start? Where does it
what
begin?
is depression?
Yeah, what is depression? Yeah.
So we have the diagnostic criteria, but really mood fluctuation is very normal. And then we start to look at chemical imbalances. You can kind of begin to understand it. But this chemical of dopamine is really important because what you see is depleted levels of dopamine, especially in the brain, lead to a host of problems. So when you have depleted dopamine in the brain, you're going to be a seeker of really big dopamine hits. And that can lead to addiction, like we talked about a lot.
Sounds like addiction, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
where you're looking for the same thing over and over, right? That's why, I mean, you want to know a really big hit that's really easy to get? Win at gambling. One of the most addictive habits you can get.
Good.
Right? I mean, you win and it comes out of nowhere and it's this really wonderful, amazing hit. And it's like, oh my gosh, I love it so much. But how often do you really win at gambling?
Never.
It doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah.
So if I know I'm hardly ever going to win, why then is my dopamine telling me to seek this behavior?
Because the dump is really big if you do win.
You'd think that.
Oh, okay.
What is fascinating is that the dopamine hit of a near win is equivalent to the dopamine hit of an actual win.
Really?
It's about seeking. It's not about achieving.
That makes sense. It's about seeking.
It's about looking for it and getting it. It's about the process of getting, not actually getting
it. Okay.
So that's a really good hack for people to kind of understand the dopamine system.
Yeah.
So let's think about other behaviors in life that we're seeking that could be very, very helpful, that we could kind of highlight or maximize usage of in order to better our lives.
I mean, I have one that
comes
I
to mind
swear
first.
by.
Get ready. Here it comes, folks. 3,
Cold
2, 1.
plunge. Cold or cold water, shower, whatever. But cold plunge, like huge.
Because the dopamine hit is big.
It's amazing.
It's equivalent to cocaine.
It really, well, and it's funny because like I do have to talk myself into getting in every morning.
Damn time.
But now that you say it's the seeking thing, it really is like when I am walking to that cold plunge, like I probably am feeling already like a little dopamine hit because I do get a little excited. And then I'm like, okay, am I going to do 2 minutes or am I going to do 3 minutes? Like, what am I going to do? And then of course I automatically go to 3 minutes because I'm like, well, I can't go down to 2. I've been doing 3. And then I hit the 3 and I get in and I'm like, instant hit. It's like, feels so good.
Yep.
But also so painful. It's the weirdest thing. But I feel like it's been the thing to make me mentally stronger and more in charge than my voice in my head.
What do you mean?
So we all have like a voice in our head, right? That like we talk to all day. I talk to it all day. And I feel like once in my life that voice was stronger than actual myself. Brindy, myself.
Okay.
And the way that I wanted to show up was I wasn't showing up because the voice in my head was like, well, no, like we're not strong enough to do that. And we're not capable of doing that. We're not smart enough to do that. And so since getting in the cold showers, that voice has gotten quieter.
Really?
And not even quieter, but I've gained a relationship with that mental part of me. And I now tell that part of me, we can do this. We are strong enough. We are capable.
And that part of you will listen?
Yes.
What have you done besides cold plunges that has helped that part to kind of get on board and be a better listener of the self of Brindy?
Breath work. Breathwork's been huge. Exercising. Pushing myself in the gym has again given me that confidence level that the self speaking to that voice is gotten stronger and braver and more courageous and we can do hard things. And I feel like we're kind of teaming up together.
Love that.
To be like, we can do this. It's really cool.
I've seen that big time. Oh, your transformation over the last year is really several years, obviously, but really in the last year has been incredible. People commenting all the time. We were talking to our friends last night and they were telling you how much you changed.
I know. It was really cool.
Well, and as much as everybody's like, well, you know, I don't know if I want to try these things. Like maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. Just fucking do it, for crying out loud. God, what do you have to lose? Everybody's so, and this is the thing that gets, you know, and I get pretty intense about it, but I get really frustrated with people because they keep coming to me like, oh, you know, my life is so hard and like I just can't seem to do it. And I'm like, do what? I'm like, well, I don't know. I was like, just go get in the cold. Just turn on freaking cold water for 10 seconds, 30 seconds, and just try that.
Yeah.
And just see what happens.
I get it though on their perspective, because I remember being there. But I think the thing for like where I was before I took the cold showers, before I told you, I think I was so scared of failing at it, and it was going to be another thing I failed at. And I didn't have the guts to like tell you if I failed at it, because then it's just one more thing that tells that voice that you're right. We're not strong enough. We're not brave enough.
How much of you believing that about yourself relates back to the story of I'm not strong enough, I'm a failure?
Now or
then? Now,
oh,
forever.
Oh, it like, well, then like the way I don't talk, like when I was talking to myself that way, it like was like sealed the deal.
Yeah.
Like I just, okay, that's me.
That's just what it,
I'm not smart enough. I'm not brave enough.
but
Okay.
That story
I'm going to play this role. Yeah.
Felt true.
Oh, it felt so true.
And yet
I don't.
It was total bullshit.
It was total bullshit,
It's
which
a
is
lie.
crazy.
So now let's think about this for just a second, okay? And this is the cognitive element of depression, of really mood disorders, of mental health in general, right? Mm-hmm. I have these mental models, the way that my brain sees myself in relation to the world, and I believe that these things are true.
Yeah.
That I'm not good enough, that I'm a failure, that if I try, a big one, right? A huge one for so many people is I'm not smart.
Yeah.
I'm dumb. I hear this all the time. And you say, okay, well, where's the evidence to support this as true? And then all of a sudden, the brain can go into memories. And you can look back at this long list of memories that go way, 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 way back. But what's really cool about therapy stuff is what we do is we try and dig until we can find like one of the earliest memories that began this particular thought process. So do you have one of those, like an early memory? Like pick a story, any story.
Oh, man.
I'm dumb. I'm a failure. I'm not good enough.
So the biggest one that I remember, like just off the top of my head, which I know there's more than that, but the biggest one that was my first breakthrough was I'm a crybaby. You're a crybaby.
What's your earliest memory of that?
Oh, man. Okay. We'll go back to, I was probably like 8 or 9. I don't know. And I just remember playing Uno with my brothers. My mom wasn't home from work yet. I do remember that. And it was just me and my brothers and my dad, and we were playing Uno. And I remember getting a draw 4, and I was like, okay, I can handle this. And then I think my other brother put down another draw 4, which now I know you can't do that. And I had to draw like 12 cards. And I just remember bursting out crying and just being like, and then, you know, you're such a crybaby. We don't want to play games with you. You just cry all the time. And I had this story in my head for the longest time. And I do remember crying a lot as a kid. I felt a lot as a kid. I didn't know that then like I do know now. And so I had this story in my head that I'm just a crybaby. And I need to like buck up. I need to man up. I need to like bootstrap up, you know, and not cry so much and stuff like that. And so I remember doing work on that, being like told as a crybaby. And I was able to change that story. And now when I hear the word crybaby or I do cry, I'm like, this is a superpower because I'm comfortable enough to cry. I'm comfortable enough to show that I feel a lot.
So before crying was evidence of your weakness, and now crying is evidence of
strength. 100% strength.
So what created that shift?
A lot of work. A lot of work. Awareness. One, I think having awareness that this story that I keep telling in my head is it's believable, but it doesn't fit right. It's not sitting well in my body.
What do you mean?
The belief that I had in my head of saying I'm a crybaby And then when I go to feel
it in
the body, it's like,
Yes.
no, you're not
Because
yeah.
what does it feel like in the body?
It feels like well, at the time it felt like this, it didn't feel
I got
like
a
it
word.
didn't resonate.
I got a word for it.
Yeah.
Conflict.
Yes. There was a conflict between the thought and the way my body felt.
Yeah, notice that.
100%.
So think about this in relation to depression.
Yeah.
And what the body is creating.
Yes.
In the mood.
Yes.
In the feeling
mm-hmm.
of experiencing.
Yep.
Conflict. And this is the birthplace of human growth, change, understanding, well-being. All the beauty and goodness of life comes from the exploration of conflict within the self.
Mm-hmm.
But if I numb the hell out of that and I just avoid it and I never talk about it and I just think that, I just am a crybaby or I am weak, and then my mind looks around for evidence to support that as true,
mm-hmm.
I never deal with the conflict. But again, what is the purpose of the conflict in the first place?
Awareness.
Yes.
Teaching you.
Teaching me what?
To get out, for me, to get out of my head and more into my body. Like to feel where did I feel it?
Yeah.
I think that was another one that took me a while to figure out too, but where was I feeling the pain? Like in my chest, in my gut, like I don't know how to explain it. You could probably explain it better, but like I had this like sick feeling in my stomach.
Gut.
Yeah.
Get ready for this one.
Yeah, in my stomach. And I just remember being like I felt like I wanted to like throw it up so I could like just be done with it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's when I realized like, okay, this is something that I need to feel more, which was weird.
You have to feel it.
Because you don't want to feel that. Like it feels sick.
You have to move through that feeling.
Yeah.
Because on the other side of that feeling is awareness and understanding.
Was amazing.
Yeah.
I got the awareness like that I am a crybaby and it is a superpower. And there's people I know who can't cry. And like, I wish I could give them the power of like, just cry, man, just cry it out. Because on the other side, like you said, it's beauty.
This is the serotonergic, the serotonin element of depression.
Okay.
So where is serotonin developed?
In your gut.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And where do you feel it all?
In my gut.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And where else is serotonin being processed?
And go up to your brain.
So
right.
I have this heady part of depression. This is the thinky part of depression that oddly I feel in my gut. This is so common, right? And so I'm feeling this discontent, this conflict, this like yuckiness in my gut, and I hate the way that it feels. But if I really were to trace it back to the thinking that creates that feeling in my gut, oftentimes that's those mental models. That's that I'm a failure, I'm not good enough, I can't do this. For me, it's I'm a fraud, huge one. I'm a fraud is massive for me, right? Yeah. I'm a fraud, I'm a fake, I'm a liar, I'm not good enough, right? Those all come in the same kind of like category for me. And I feel that very, very much in my gut. Fascinatingly, what we know now about serotonin, right, is that if you can kind of help the serotonin regulatory system like give it some aid, it helps with depressive symptoms. And this is the major aim of Prozac and Zoloft, SSRIs. Okay. What they're doing is they're aiding the brain's ability to use the serotonin it already has more effectively. So let's think about this for just a second, okay? I take this pill. I have a certain amount of serotonin in my body, and then I'm trying to use as much of that as possible to make me feel better. That's one way to do it. What if, though, what if I could actually help my body to create more serotonin?
On your own.
Without the aid of the medication. What would be things that would do that? So now we get into the gut biome, gut health, cognitive therapy, huge for doing this, right? And the hot topic of this decade, psychedelics. Yeah. This is where psychedelics come very much into play. And this is why now we can talk about this on the podcast, where probably 2 years ago would not have been able to talk about this. It would have been scary to talk about it.
Yeah.
But now it's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's in academic research. There's places showing up all over the place. We're seeing some major breakthroughs with psychedelics, especially with ketamine, with psilocybin and with MDMA, right? So if you know ketamine, right, we've done an episode on ketamine. Go back and listen to that. Psilocybin, that's your magic mushrooms, and MDMA, that's ecstasy, street name ecstasy, or Molly. All three of these things, one of them's already totally fully legal, ketamine.
Yeah.
And then the other two are likely to come online, especially MDMA. It's looking like right now MDMA is going to come online within the next year or so.
Which is so crazy to me.
Right? Well, because it's very much a cognitive thing. With MDMA, you can talk through the problems.
I'm just surprised that those two are above psilocybin.
Yeah.
Which is so interesting. But don't get me started. It's because it's a drug that it's synthetically made and chemical.
And it gets brought up a lot on this podcast and a lot of others right now, right?
Yeah.
It's a very popular thing. But the thing that's really interesting about, we'll talk about mushrooms, the psilocybin thing, is you look at the serotonin molecule and you look at the psilocybin molecule, and they are virtually identical except for like one little part of that molecule. So when you're taking these psilocybin mushrooms, what you're actually doing is you feel a lot in your gut, surprisingly, right? Is you're actually increasing levels of serotonin in your body, and that can affect cognition and the way you think. And it can actually shut down parts of the brain and activate other parts of the brain. It's very fascinating stuff. But that is why this is being pushed through and is being held as effective. Even in the research that we did before the podcast, it talks about the efficacy of psilocybin as intervention for depression, right?
Yes.
Did you get the stats on that? I remember off the top of my head if you can't find them.
Let's see. For this pharmaceutical treatments.
It's going to be towards the end.
Go ahead, if you know it.
I believe it's 50 to 70% of the people who took the psilocybin reported a reduction or eradication of symptoms. Yeah. Significant improvement in depressive symptoms, mood, and affect in 50% to 70% of study participants who received psilocybin treatment.
50%?
Yep.
That's incredible.
Yep. And this is a point here, right? Highly trained, highly safe, very experienced individuals should be guiding these sessions. This is not just something that you're going to just go haphazardly into and just start eating a bunch of mushrooms. There's actually a methodology to this whole thing, and it's only legal in certain parts. So be very, very, very cautious with this. There's a bunch of freaking weird shit popping up all over the place, and people who title themselves as like shaman and whatever, and you got to be careful with that. And I don't want to get too much, into this stuff, but I do want everybody to know that what we're learning about the brain is leading to some very impressive and important discoveries when it comes to mood management.
Yeah.
So aside from psychedelics, what are other things that can help improve serotonin? Do you remember any of them? If not.
Oh, you were asking me.
Oh, that's okay.
I was like,
serotonin levels, especially mood and things like that. You're going to
your mood. Yeah.
Exercise is huge. Absolutely, absolutely massive. Go ahead.
And nutrition, what you put in your body. I think that's a bigger deal than like any of us like to believe it is, but it really is. The chemicals they're putting on food these days and stuff like that, and we're consuming and putting inside our bodies is really affecting our brain.
Big
a
time.
lot. Yeah.
Big time. Brain and gut biome.
And gut bio. Yeah. Which is huge because that's where that chemical comes from, is our gut.
So eating whole foods, upping or lowering your sugar intake is going to be huge. Upping your protein intake. We're big fans of the greens drinks. I mean, you hear about all these all over the place now. You got your athletic greens, all this stuff. We've been taking it every morning. I feel like that's given me a huge boost in mood. I really, really like that. There's other supplements that are available too that help with mood. One that I recommend to a lot of people. There's a lot of research on this. It's very, very prevalent in Eastern medicine, Chinese and Japanese medicine. It's called lion's mane.
Oh, you don't recommend it. You make most of your clients get on it.
Yeah, I don't.
It's like kind of like a requirement.
I can't really. Well,
that's true.
That's
I know,
not true.
But you require, like you,
I can't
not require them, but you push that big time. Like it is a big one we push. Yeah,
and it's very, very safe. You
and
can
very
do your own
effective.
research on this, and extremely effective at doing a whole mess of stuff. But the main thing that it's doing in the brain, it does a lot of things, but it increases what's called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF. And when you increase brain-derived neurotrophic factor in the brain, what that does is it increases the brain's ability to generate and regenerate cell growth.
Yeah.
which there's not a whole lot of stuff that does that. So when you're trying to create new neural pathways in the brain that overwrite old neural pathways in the brain, and the old writing, the old software in the brain is telling me I'm bad, I'm not good enough, I'm a crybaby, whatever, and you're trying to write new neural pathways in the brain, lion's mane is a great supplement to aid in that process, along with some other, they call them functional or medicinal mushrooms. Cordyceps is a good one. Reishi's another one. Chaga's another one. Turkey tail has actually been linked to cancer research and immune health. That helps with the gut biome. You can look into this yourselves, but the world of fungi
Yeah.
is quite dynamic, and it's something that I've become really interested in recently because I've seen so many great results from it in so many different people. And most importantly, the reason why I'm really fascinated by this is because when I do my academic research, there's so many papers coming about this all the time, all over the place. There's dozens of papers coming out monthly on psychedelic research, and specifically even with like the functional mushrooms and things like that. So it's pretty fascinating stuff.
It really is. Like the mushrooms they're gonna change the world.
Yeah, they are.
They're gonna change depression, or I should say like mood disorders.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Especially like if we're open to it,
Yeah.
Be open to things. Be open to learning something and understanding it before you just say no to it.
Mm-hmm.
Like read about it, do your research, see if it's a good fit for you. Again, there's like the ketamine and the MDMA. That's not out yet, right? One's not out. The MDMA one is not out yet. But like ketamine, that's been going on for a while now and stuff like that. But if you really are struggling with depression and you're just at your wit's end, like that's what I would recommend is go do a ketamine session or a psilocybin session.
Yeah. Cautiously, recommend a strong word. I don't know. Do your research first. Psilocybin is not something you can really do in the state of Utah. There's other states where you can do this stuff. Sign up for clinical trials. Do it through the proper channels. But ketamine, there are certain methodologies that are better than others when it comes to ketamine. We have a lot of pop-up shops showing up all over the country where they're doing treatments where they kind of leave you in a room and you'll go get the medicine, and then the medicine is the only thing that's doing the treatment. It's not just a chemical imbalance. There's a cognitive, right, a thinking component to this as well. And if my old thinking patterns are the thing that's running the show when it comes to these ketamine treatments, I need a guide there with me, or I need what's called integration to help me integrate new habits, new thinking, new mental processes to help with this new brain growth that I'm trying to create so that it's changing my system, right?
Yeah.
Because the way that I'm going to get more serotonin to be generated in my gut is my brain is going to have to get on board with creating more serotonin.
Yeah.
It's going to have to say, we need more, and here's why, and here's how. I can't do that unless I'm creating the growth in the brain.
Yeah.
So what ketamine does is it works on the NMDA receptor, which is helping the brain create new habits.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting. So it's less about the actual going under part thing, the dissociative experience of ketamine.
Yeah.
And
the
more
after.
about the 7 days following.
You're right.
And integrating therapeutically new thinking as well as habitually new behaviors. That's much more important when it comes to ketamine, which is going to be it's actually a completely different neurological mechanism when it comes to ketamine and psilocybin, which is, they're fascinated they work as well as they do on the same kind of like issues, but they work in very, very different ways.
That is true.
Yes. Moving away from the medicine side of things, let's talk about practical stuff that you can do to like tools and habits and things like that you can do to improve your mood immediately. One of the things that's going to be really important to understand, because we've talked about serotonin, we've talked about did we talk about cortisol?
We did not talk about cortisol.
We talked about dopamine.
Yeah, dopamine and serotonin.
Yeah, the other one's norepinephrine,
Yeah.
which we don't really need to talk about a ton, but basically norepinephrine is going to be very much involved in that pain pleasure thing alongside dopamine. A lot of medications work with norepinephrine. Norepinephrine is like noradrenaline, the same kind of like neural pathway working with dopamine, same kind of stuff. And that's why the medications work with norepinephrine, that work with norepinephrine seem to help depression. But the other factor here is cortisol, which we talked a lot about in the episode on stress. So one of the things that we know about depression is you see a timing issue with cortisolic release.
Yep.
So what a healthy person gets every single morning, depending on when you wake up, but about an hour or so after you wake up, you'll see an increase in cortisol levels, which is what you want. So what we see with people with depression is you actually see peak cortisol levels hitting around 9 p.m. at night. And cortisol is a stress hormone, but it's an energy producing hormone.
Yeah.
And what it's designed to do is give you the energy you need to be able to go throughout the day.
Yeah.
So that's why you get it in the morning. So you get this cortisol peak in the morning, and then it drops throughout the rest of the day, right? Now, when depressive issues start to enter the picture, we see kind of a retention in cortisol in the morning, maybe peaks throughout the day. We see other neurotransmitters coming in and creating the energy that the body needs. But really, we see this fatigue component.
Yeah.
There's a big part of depression. They're really tired. They don't have a lot of motivation. There's your dopamine problem, right? But really, there's this low energy level, and that is a cortisol issue. So what we see is a peak in cortisol in the evening, and then they can't sleep, and the cycle continues. So sleep becomes a major, major factor in depression. And if you haven't listened to our episode on sleep yet, go. You don't need to pause this, but maybe pause it and go put it into your next one to listen to, because it is a real. That's maybe my opinion, our best information episode yet.
For sure. It has a lot of information.
It's really good. I would highly recommend checking it out. And sleep is directly correlated to mood issues. Directly correlated.
And sleep starts with your day.
It does. So let's talk about cortisol. Okay. So cortisol is peaking at 9 p.m. for people with depression, and they have bad sleep. So fixing sleep is a really good idea. And so you said something that's very important. Sleep starts in the beginning of the day. That's directly related to cortisol.
Yep.
Because what you want to do is you want to get your cortisol levels to peak in the morning and drop off throughout the evening.
Yeah.
So your morning becomes absolutely essential. So if you can get a spike in cortisol and you can get a spike in dopamine in the morning every single day, you are going to kind of like remedy this cortisol issue, and you're going to see big improvements in mood over time. Improvements in mood over time. So that's why we recommend sunlight in the morning.
Yep. Because it releases that cortisol. Yeah. And you want that cortisol to release because doesn't it take so many hours to use up in the day, cortisol, right? Several. And you want to make sure that it's released by the end of the day, or you're going to be, like you said, high stressed at the end of the day and not be able to sleep. And then the cycle continues. Yeah.
So that sun in the morning is going to help with the timing. It helps with your circadian rhythm is what it's called. Yep. And that circadian rhythm is very much linked to like the cortisolic kind of cycle. What you want is you view morning sunlight that's going to increase levels of dopamine in the body. And it's kind of nice. I mean, you go out and look at the sun, and you don't like look directly at it, you look like kind of like right below it, and you'll feel your body start to energize, and you get these really big kind of like big breaths that just kind of come out of nowhere. It's really beautiful. It's kind of fun, huh?
I think what's cool about it too is like there's multiple benefits from it. It's not just releasing your cortisol. You're starting your day off mindful. Like you're taking a big breath. You're by yourself. You're kind of getting your day set up. And that's where you can really talk to yourself too and get it started and be like, all right, like I get to live life today. What am I going to do?
Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
Additionally, exercise in the morning.
Yep.
Unbelievably important.
Yeah.
Unbelievably important.
They even say like because you do your push-ups in the morning, like within like the first 20 minutes, kind of get your body moving in a like up your heartbeat,
right? I haven't found
right?
any research on that habit in particular.
Okay.
Anecdotally, my personal experience and the experience of the people I've worked with, that's been
a huge game changer. Yeah.
Yeah. Just like right when you wake up, do 2 or 3 things that are super uncomfortable. That you don't want to do. Make your bed, do push-ups.
Why is making your bed so hard sometimes? It's so stupid, but it is. Yeah.
I mean, you look at the neuromechanism of life.
Yeah.
What do we want to do? The brain is designed to create pleasure over pain.
Yeah.
It goes right back to the beginning of what we were talking about in the
Yeah.
podcast. It's not pleasurable to wake up in the morning when I'm exhausted. I want to go back to sleep, to move around and make my bed. But what we know that's directly linked with good health, especially good mental health, is regularly doing things that you don't want to know or don't want to do that you know are good for you.
So basically, get comfortable with being uncomfortable, folks.
Well, and fascinatingly, what we've found in the brain within the last few years is there's a part of the brain called the anterior midcingulate cortex, the AMCC, that sits kind of like not right in the front of your brain, like behind the front of your brain. And this part of your brain, the size of the AMCC is correlated with mood, depression symptoms, well-being, and motivation and willpower. The bigger your AMCC is, the more willpower, tenacity, and drive you have. The smaller your AMCC is, the more likely you are to have mental health disorders. So now, well, what do we do to increase the size of the AMCC? Unfortunately / fortunately, the research says you have to do things that you quote unquote hate to do regularly.
Mm-hmm. Which, I mean,
this is the opposite of our societal norm.
We want comfort. Yeah.
We love
comfort.
And
it's killing us.
The direct contributor to the rise in depressive disorders in our world. There are parts of the world that they don't have the same issues with depressive disorders like we do.
Yeah.
These places are miserable to live in, specifically Scandinavia. These people, they don't have mood disorder issues like we do. Do they have problems? Yes, for sure. Are people there unwell and sick? Yes. Do they actually have pretty high rates of suicide? Fascinatingly, also, yes. But mood disorders in general are much lower because of their lifestyle and the way that they live. They live communally. They're much more active than we are. And that just seems to contribute directly to good mood, good health, good mental health.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that AMCC thing is fascinating, and it's something that I just learned recently that I'm really excited about because it's very simple.
Yeah.
If I do stuff that I don't want to do regularly, I'm going to get more willpower. I'm going to have more tenacity.
Which, yes.
And there's probably an inverse relationship between depressive symptoms and willpower. If I have a lot of willpower, my depressive symptoms are probably going to be pretty low.
Well, and I think the other cool thing about it too is like putting yourself in those uncomfortable situations, especially if you have kids or, you know, nieces or nephew or people who are around you or look up to you. Like you're showing them, you're being an example to them, you know, like you're showing them like to do hard things. And like our kids have now gotten in the water with us and cold plunging. And Liam, our third boy, he used to be the most like reserved. I feel like he was the funny guy and he was good with being comfortable. Now he has pushed himself like this last year. I'm like, who is this kid?
Fun now.
He is like a different kid. And I really do think it's like him getting in the cold plunges with us.
Cold has been good. It's just, and it could be anything. And it's his sports.
Yeah.
I would contribute a lot to his dyslexia.
Yeah. He had to work really hard. He hated reading. Hated it. But what did he do every night? He was terrible at it.
He couldn't do it.
Yeah, he couldn't do it.
It was so difficult for him. He was how far behind?
Oh, he's third grade.
Grade levels behind.
Yeah, grade levels behind.
Now he's reading at grade level.
Yeah.
And he likes to read more than any of our other kids.
He does. I love it.
I mean, that's just like, come on.
Yeah.
Talk about an analogy or a metaphor.
Yeah.
You know? So when we talk about depression, conversely, we probably should also talk about happiness, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
What did you think?
Yeah.
You want to know something cool about happiness? It's contagious. Measurably contagious. People who are happy generally have happy people around them. Yeah. And it's not because they have happy people around them. It's because happy people generate this vibrational frequency of happiness, and that attracts other people who have that vibrational frequency of happiness.
Sync up.
And what's really interesting is you can look at groups of families, friends, organizations where one person this linchpin person makes a change in their life and they become happier, and that bleeds out into the rest of the family, into the rest of the organization, the rest of the group. Conversely,
Yeah.
unfortunately, you get one person who's depressed, one person who's ill, one person who's got some severe addiction problems. That can also bleed out into the rest of the family if we're not careful.
Yeah.
And that's where it comes back down to willpower
Yeah.
and tenacity and drive and motivation. And this is why the dopamine issue
Awareness.
is a big issue. And hacking that dopamine system becomes a big, big part of life. Making sure that you are doing uncomfortable things regularly will directly lead to your well-being and happiness. You will be happier if you do stuff you don't want to do.
It's true though.
It's so bizarre. It's just true.
It's like my new
true.
testimony because I loved everything comfort. Everything comfort.
Comfort queen.
I was comfort queen.
Hell yeah, you were.
Remember when I just needed my thumb and like my silky and like my bed? And I did. I sucked my thumb. Put it out there. That was my biggest comfort.
And we want to be happy.
Yeah.
And we want to feel good. And we correlate those two things with each other. If I feel good and it's pleasurable, that means I'm happy. Go ahead.
What was the podcast that we were listening to? Maybe it was Huberman, where it's not happiness that us humans seek. It's
Peace.
Peace. We seek peace.
Yeah.
And I feel like between like the happiness, like the moments that we have of happy, when we're not feeling happiness, we want peace.
We want contentment.
Contentment. Yeah.
Well, and what's cool about happiness is there's kind of these two components to happiness. One is the state of feeling satisfied, content, at peace with, grateful for my experience.
Yeah.
That's a big part of happiness when you look at like actual happiness research.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like one of the biggest things that I've recognized lately is for me to have this peace, I had to start taking control of my life.
Oh, you mean control is a part of happiness?
Of my everyday life? Yes. Yeah.
Because if you feel like you don't have control, what do you feel?
I guess.
If I'm out of control, am I going to be happy or more likely am I going to be depressed?
Probably depressed, yeah.
Why?
Because life is just happening to you.
Yes, that's so good.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I was going to say. I'm like, I felt like when I was like depressed and uncomfortable or like thought I was in my comfort state, like it was life happening to me. And I kind of just felt like I just was sitting there watching it happen. When all these other people are like doing these great things and like becoming something of themselves. And so when I was able to, figure out that conflict and have that awareness, like, oh my gosh, like I want to make my everyday mundane life awesome. But how do I do that? Oh, I have to do the work. I have to take control. And I think sometimes people just sit there and wait for someone to like do something for them. No, it's you. You have to do it. You have to do the work. You have to have the awareness. You have to be the one to tell yourself, I can do this, and take your power back.
So how do we do this with parenting? How do you get your kids to have that? Because this is the conundrum of parenting, right? And you look at, I'll look at myself, right? And look at other people, and I look at you, and I think about parenting styles and how we grew up. And, I'm not trying to like knock Cindy or Jeff's parenting or anything like that, but like you were insulated from discomfort a lot.
Oh, yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
Because your mom didn't really want you to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, no.
Because what's the thinking there?
Well, because
if my kid's uncomfortable, then.
Well, for her, it all goes back to everybody's upbringing. Like I parent the way I parent because of my upbringing.
Right.
My mom parented me the way she parented me because of her upbringing.
Sure.
And my mom felt a lot of uncomfortableness. And the one thing she wanted to create for her kids was comfort because she didn't have that.
She had none.
So of course I was comforted my whole life. And then, but is that necessarily good for a child to be comforted?
Does that lead to happiness?
Yeah. Does that lead to happiness? No.
In fact, it doesn't. It leads to depression and sadness and dependency.
Yeah.
That's the hard lesson.
Yeah.
That's the hard lesson.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the conundrum we find ourselves in with parenting in this day and age, right? Where we have comfort at our fingertips. We have dissociation, disconnection, and numbing at our fingertips every second of the entire damn day.
Mm-hmm.
Within 5 seconds, I can be on my phone, completely dissociated and disconnected from my body.
Yep.
Milliseconds, gone.
That's crazy.
Every child on the planet also has access to this incredibly powerful, overwhelmingly misunderstood tool called the cell phone, called screen time.
Mm-hmm. Apps.
It is an epidemic, and we have no idea what this is going to look like in the future. But I will tell you there's one thing that is extremely important. Screen time after 11 p.m. for children is directly associated with increases in depression and, most importantly, suicidal thinking. If your kid, and we've said this on the podcast before, and I'll probably say this a dozen more times, if your kids are watching screens after 11 p.m., specifically YouTube and video games, you are contributing to their ill mental health. That is irresponsible parenting. I'm a bold guy. I don't give a shit. I'm sorry. We need to do a better job because here's the deal. I get kids in my office all the time, and they tell me about their parenting or their screen time habits, and I want to throw up.
Yeah.
It makes me sick to my freaking stomach.
They brag about it.
But parents, oh gosh.
Yeah.
But we also, and it's not your fault. Don't blame yourself. Don't get mad at yourself. You can get mad at me, sure. But we don't understand this thing that we have at our fingertips. We don't understand how it affects us yet because we haven't had it long enough. So we're learning along the way. But it's really important for us to be very mindful and very aware of what is and is not working for us.
Well, and I think it goes back to doing hard things. It's
does.
not easy telling my 16-year-old to get off his video games on a weekend night when he's not out with his friends and they're all at home choosing to play Fortnite with each other. Like, it's not easy for me to go down there and be like, okay, we're done. It's hard. It's easier to just be like, you know what? Let him play. He's having fun, and he's leaving me alone, and I'm doing my thing. Like, it's hard to go down there. So do the hard thing.
Oh,
like
last night, go ahead.
No, yeah.
Last night, I'm laying in bed, right?
Oh yeah.
And
we make our kids turn in their phones.
Well, I'm laying in bed, and I freaking I'm starting to fall asleep, and I'm like ready to go to sleep. I'm like, oh, it's been such a long day. It's been a great day. We went snowboarding. It was such a great day.
A good day.
And I'm ready to go to sleep. And I started to close my eyes, and I go, oh, crap. I don't have Ezra's phone.
Mm-hmm.
And this thought comes to my head. It's fine. He can have it one night.
Yeah.
But I'm a disciplined son of a bitch. And I know. I'm like, And I get up right out of bed.
You did. You popped up.
And I went in, and I went and grabbed his phone, and I made him come in and plug it in like I always do. And I know I get all this grief from our kids and even from, that I'm too like a hard ass or whatever, but I just want consistency and predictability
and we're
for our
teaching
kids.
them habits too.
But
yeah.
More importantly, my sleep sucked ass last night. It was horrible. I didn't fall asleep. I was passing out, and then I woke myself
You
back
woke yourself up, back up. Yeah.
And this is the thing that sucks. And I'm not touting myself as some great hero parent.
We gotta sacrifice
but at a
sometimes
point,
for our kids.
I have to realize that I'm a very resilient, very capable, successful human being, and it's my damn job to make sure that my kids are safe.
Yeah.
Most dangerous thing in your child's life is a stupid phone.
Yeah.
For sure.
True. Yeah.
They have more access to danger through that thing than literally anything else. And conversely, of course, they have more access to information and great stuff. I mean, you're listening to this podcast through the very thing we're talking about. But I think we would be remiss if we didn't bring up screen time, dissociative stuff now, video games, YouTube, right? Endless Netflix content.
Because it is. It's
and
a
the
leading
correlation
cause.
to depression.
Yeah.
And they're directly related, and there's more and more and more research coming out on this. And the more we learn about it, the more we realize how detrimental it is to our mental health.
Yeah.
So be very mindful of screens with your kids and with yourself, and just notice how that affects you. Yeah. So
do you want to kind of recap for us, like what we talked about?
Sure. Can I recap? Well, what did we talk about in the beginning? I don't know. I can't remember. Let's recap.
Well, just kind of like, depression in a nutshell.
Depression in a nutshell.
Yeah, give it to us.
I'm trying to look for stuff. Oh, wait, hold on. Can we do
Five symptoms.
five symptoms
the
of
5
depression?
See, this is why we have Ryan here.
Oh yeah, thank you, Ryan. 5 symptoms of depression. Hold on.
Oh, did you have more you wanted
There's
to
more
bring up?
stuff. We have to do this.
Okay.
We have to do this. Okay.
We have to do this.
We're going to talk about inflammation
Oh, okay.
and the immune system
Okay.
in relation to depression before we wrap it up. We got
Okay.
time, right? Yeah, we'll go a little long.
We're
We're
good.
good. This is just important.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, do it.
Inflammation in the brain
Mm-hmm.
over long periods of time is called dementia.
Yes. Oh, that's scary.
I watched my grandmother go through dementia, and it was immediately preceded by a very long bout with depression, mood disorders.
Mm-hmm.
There's a correlation between the two. And if you've ever watched somebody get early onset Alzheimer's, I call it dying before you die because she was gone. My grandma was gone well before she died.
Yeah.
And I didn't really, the saddest thing about dementia is I never really got to say goodbye to her because she never really
She
knew
didn't really
who I
know, yeah.
was. And so there's all this weird kind of complicated grief with my dad's mom because it just, there's this huge disconnect.
Yeah.
And so I'm terrified of dementia, and it is very much a part of, my
It
day to
is,
day,
Yeah.
right? And all
Yeah.
these things you can do to prevent it. So I've learned a couple of things that are really important when it comes to inflammation, brain inflammation, which is also directly linked to depression. There's some supplements that you can take that you should be taking pretty much every day that are really, really valuable. Top of the list is EPA, which comes in the form of fish oil. High concentration, high potency, as well as, like very pure forms of fish oil are essential supplements, and everyone should be getting on fish oil. Research that yourself. Obviously, I can't give medication advice or supplementation advice, but it is something that is really important for you to look into. Fish oil is a great one.
Yeah.
Additionally, MCT oil is high in DHA and EPA. I take MCT oil every single morning, dump it in my coffee. 2 tablespoons of this high pure stuff is going to reduce inflammation in the brain. Additionally, gut health is important when it comes to inflammation, and the amount of diet soda and fake sugar you're ingesting is extremely important, and the types of fake sugar that you're ingesting is extremely important as well. We're on this big kick of getting off sugar. If you don't know this by now, sugar is toxic to the brain. Okay? Straight up.
Sugar is terrible
Toxic.
for you. It's hard.
It's a toxin.
It's so hard.
It's really hard. It's very addictive. And
love
if you're
sugar.
depressed, you probably love eating freaking junk food and sugar because it's a dopamine hit.
And drinking soda.
So you got to counteract that, right? And you're going to start to look for sugar supplements that are going to be helpful to you, that are not going to increase levels of inflammation in the body, that are not going to really get that insulin response. So allulose, Allulose, is a great supplement that is an alternative for sugar. Additionally, stevia is really good as well. There are some others. Those are the 2 that I really, really like that we use a lot. Monk fruit has also been touted as a great one. So just start exploring getting sugar out of your life and upping the amount of branched chain amino acid, DHA and EPA that's coming from fatty acids, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Fish oil, MCT oil. I just thought that would be an important part because
for
that's
sure.
also
It is.
directly linked to depression.
Well, and nutrition, right? It's our nutrition. What we put inside our bodies matters.
Yeah.
And if you really want to understand an addict, try getting off sugar. I'm serious.
Yeah.
You'll have an empathy for
Yep.
people who are addicted.
Yeah. And
Sugar is so hard to get off.
our
of.
good buddy Drew Manning will like this one too. There also is a lot of research on getting on the ketogenic diet.
Yes.
And how keto is supportive of good mood.
A good mood,
and getting
yeah.
people out of depression.
Depression, it's true. Which is correlated with not eating sugar, right? Because ketogenic diet, you don't get to have any sugar. Yeah.
That's great.
It is.
Okay. That's the last thing. I think I got
Okay.
everything on here that I wanted to get.
Okay.
Wonderful. So, we talked about the 5, or I guess the 9 symptoms of depression. What is major depression versus just a down mood? We talked about serotonin. We talked about cortisol, norepinephrine. We talked about dopamine. What else did we talk about? Talked about sleep a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Talked about, the pleasure pain axis, right? The
Yes.
pathway of pleasure
Pleasure
pain,
and
the
pain.
relationship between the two, the
Two.
seesaw,
Yeah.
really important.
Yeah. Well, and cortisol, how important that is.
Cortisol timing,
Yeah,
getting that up in the
timing.
morning.
Mhm.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
I hope this was a good episode. I hope you guys like this.
Yeah. Just like giving you information.
Sure.
And if go ahead.
Thanks.
No, and like if you are struggling with depression or, again, talk to somebody, reach out to us. We're happy to help you or guide you wherever you need to go. And, again, don't shame yourself, especially if you're taking a medication or anything. Like, just give yourself grace and realize like you're doing the best that you can right now. And that's all you have.
And if you need coaching, I know somebody.
Hit me up.
Great coach,
Yeah.
does amazing stuff, works a lot with the patients that I have. We work in tandem with each other. She does a lot of nutrition coaching, helpful coaching. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but she's looking really good because she's been following the freaking
Finding
amazingness
strength method
that we're trying to provide here, right? And if you follow this regimen that we have, this finding strength method thing, which we'll probably do a whole episode on.
Yeah,
here in the
we
future.
should soon. Yeah.
A lot of stuff we talk about is stuff that I've been doing with clients for years, and she's doing with her clients.
I've been doing it.
Seems
Well,
to work
I
really
started
well.
doing what
Yeah.
you do with your clients, your morning and night routine about what, 2
And what it
year and
comes
a half
down
ago?
to is we just need a little bit of accountability, a little help, somebody there to kind of be a supportive person along the way. And that doesn't necessarily need to be a clinician.
Yeah.
That can be a friend, that can be a neighbor, that can be a gym buddy or whatever. But that's what Brindy does. She provides that support for people as a life coach to kind of give them the direction that they need to go.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's something you're interested in, please hit us up. We would love to work with you. And of course, I'm taking clients occasionally. I don't work with very many people anymore. It's kind of like a really seldom thing, but every once in a while I have an opening. So you can always reach out and see if I got any openings. And we do trainings all over the place. If you'd like us to come out and do a training for you, please reach out, especially, large organizations. I do trainings all over the country regularly on all this stuff.
Yeah.
I work a lot with the first responder community. But I do also work with businesses
Well, you've
and
even gone to,
CEOs
like,
and hospitals
Yeah.
and done all sorts of different trainings for nurses and clinicians. If you own a treatment center and you're listening to this, and you want me to come out and do a training at your treatment center, I can do a training that actually provides CEUs for your
And group sessions
Then I do group
for
sessions.
other treatment centers and stuff like that. He runs the best group sessions. I feel like we need to start doing like our own personal group sessions. You're so good at it. It's awesome. I love watching you.
group's fun. Man.
Yeah.
It's good times.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for listening. We appreciate you.
Thanks.
We'll see you on the next one.